Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I am thrilled to be here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Elatia Abate and I am an entrepreneur, I'm an educator, and I've been working in the spaces of the future of work and digital transformation for the last several years. And prior to this, so I left the corporate world now 6.5 years ago. I ran global recruiting for Anheuser-Busch InBev. I ran global recruiting and then left as a VP of HR for Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal. So I have been fascinated with these topics, future of work and future of HR. And this moment, there couldn't be a better moment than the one that we're in right now to talk about this. So I'm going to share some slides here to guide our conversation along. And then we'll leave some time at the end of this for Q&A. And Enrique, who's watching this, I've got my eye on the time, so don't worry, don't fear. All right, so the future of work and what it means for the future of HR. Basic message for today is the following. Toto, I have a feeling we are not in Kansas anymore. The future of work for all of us in the last couple of weeks almost instantaneously came down and shifted the way that work is, the way that work will be. And what I mean by future of work and work is the way we create and add value in the world and moving over into this place of purpose. So away from paycheck and into purpose, moving into the space of how we are all going to thrive through the things that we do at work. And the rules, whatever they were before, they are absolutely no longer going to be the same again. And on the one hand, that can feel terrifying. And on the other hand, it can open up so much possibility. So let's dive in here to the future of work and what this is going to mean. So up until about 4 weeks ago, my big assumption was that the future of work and what work is going to mean and how we're going to interact with each other in the workplace was going to come about by a confluence of technological events, which I'll get into in a second. But my assumption was wrong, and it's a virus, and in an even shorter span of time, what we thought was going to take 2 years or 5 years, or sometimes a little bit longer, all of a sudden happens in a short amount of weeks. And so here we are faced with this whole new world, and a whole new world that is not happening separate from the underlying factors that were there before. And so I want to give, so we're in this moment of virus impact, and these three factors that were already occurring, which I call the perfect storm of the future of work. They didn't disappear because of this. They're still happening in the background. And they're going to create, to the dismay of some, even more change and disruption. And that's the impact of technology in the work that we do. So technology replacing jobs. Everybody's seen that 2013 Oxford study that says that more than half of US jobs, 47%, will be computerized or taken over by robots. There is a shifting workforce population, which is a major factor in the future of work. And this has some to do with baby boomers retiring and millennials and Gen Z coming into the workplace and the differences in culture and needs and necessities. But it also has to do with, beyond that, first of all, the massive shift toward contract work. And this is one of those things that the virus is bringing to the forefront right now. The fissures, the weaknesses in the system that weren't yet ready to support contract work are coming front and center now. You know, over the last couple of years, we've moved from 34% of people to 45% of people in some way, shape, or form getting some or all of their income through gig economy kinds of work. And then there's the ubiquitousness of the internet. So it's expected that in the next 5 years or so, half of the planet, 3 to 4 billion people who have never had access to the internet and the educational opportunities that it provides will also be coming online. And then the third part of that perfect storm would be a recession in the economy, which again, the virus pushed us into instantaneously. So all these things are happening, massive disruptions going on, and what it can feel like is a wave of an enormous tsunami of change and disruption, which can at first glance feel terrifying. And though we're faced with a choice right now, we can either say, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is all coming, and just wait for it to wash us over, or we can make the choice to say, okay, how can we surf this for the opportunity that it is and create some value, create positive impact, and create something amazing in the world. So before we dive into what it is that's going to help us do all of this, I want to just give the context that we are in the space of 3 moments of time as we're talking about the future of work, and how in every action, in every moment, in every step that each of us are taking right now, we are shaping what that future is and what it's going to look like. So we are in moment 1 right now, which is a moment of crisis. So lots of things are shifting. So many companies doing almost instantaneous work from home, massive reconfigurations of factory floors, not only for different kinds of production, but also for human safety. So all of this stuff is happening right now. There's going to be a time, and we don't know yet what it's going to be, but after this moment of, we'll call crisis, we're going to move into a period of interim, where work will sort of start and we're going to kind of be back to things, except things will have to be reconfigured because people are still going to be afraid of getting a virus. Organizations or companies or gyms or restaurants are going to have to space people out in different ways. So there's going to be an odd interim period as we move forward into a new world. And it's, as the previous speaker said, it's not going to be, there is no way that we're stuffing all of this change and movement back into the box that it was in before. We have moved this out into a world, so there's no going back, there's only a new normal. And this is what this future of work, what this new normal, what the creation of this new normal means for HR, has HR right at the front and center of organizations, which I think is actually a very exciting place to be. So the future of work and what it means for the future of HR. So in the face of all of this, what have we discovered? So the perfect storm of the future of work was already going to be creating massive disruption. And this, combined with the virus, is creating disruption at a speed, scale, and scope that we never hoped to, or we never imagined, most of us, that we would see before. And so my work around the future of work, I've spent the last several years looking for answers to the question, how might we empower success, both individual success and company success, in the face of the massive disruption that is the future of work? And I've come to some answers in this space, mostly better questions, but some answers and framework that I think can help all of you as you're thinking about what this means for yourselves, for your organizations, for HR as a whole, that can frame this conversation. The first piece is mindset, not simply how we even react to what's happening out in the world, but more importantly, what we choose to do with what's happening, whether we choose to be victims of our circumstances or captains of our destiny. The second thing that's going to help us thrive in the face of disruption, no matter how great that is education. And I'm going to go into what that means in terms of education and how this falls into the scope of HR. So for each of these pillars that I'm sharing right now, we're going to dive into some of the components of HR. This could be a class for an entire day, but we're going to squeeze as much as we can into this half hour. And then the third piece is collaboration. So the answers for thriving in the face of massive disruption, which I hesitate to even say it out loud because, who knows what this is going to set off, but massive disruption, it's hard to imagine disruption greater than the one that we're living in right now. So thriving in the face of these 3 things, the antidote to that perfect storm plus the virus, is mindset, education, and collaboration. So what does this future of work mean for HR when we move from paycheck into purpose? The first and the biggest distinction. So if you remember nothing else out of this conversation that we're having here today, if you can remember this distinction and this choice between captain and captive, am I going to be captive to my circumstances and wonder, why is this happening to me? Why did the virus hit? Why am I working from home? Why did I get furloughed? Or You can step into the captain's seat to be the captain of your own destiny and ask the much more effective question, given that we're here, what do we want to create? So I can't change the fact the virus is happening right now. I can't. And if we look here, so I pulled this graphic up from the New York Times. This is from the paper last week. 6.6 million people in 1 week apply for unemployment benefits in the United States. That's 10 times the worst week in the Great Recession. So I wish this wasn't happening. I wish this wasn't happening for everybody who's applying for unemployment benefits. I wish it wasn't happening for me, who 98% of my business is dependent on being in person with other humans. I wish this wasn't happening. But since it is, and since we're here, the much more effective question is, what do we want to create? What do we want to build? What opportunities is this opening up for us? And that's the choice that we're all given right now, and in the face of this and all disruption that's here and coming down the pike. So how is this applied when we think about HR? So under that umbrella of captain versus captive, there's an or mindset, meaning a separateness, or an and mindset, which is collaborating and coming together. And when we think about HR, or is the mindset of an HR business partner. And what do I mean by this? In the language of business partner, there's an implied separation from the business itself. So that's the past of work as we think about HR. When we're moving into what the future of work is, HR is the business. It is leadership. I was working and have worked on a persona-based model for what the C-suite of the future looks like with PwC. And the shift in the importance of the strategy of the role of the chief HR is fundamental as we look through digital transformation, which, by the way, goes well beyond taking coding classes, right? And it's a total shift in organization. But this is the shift as we're thinking. So it's moving away from this business partner mindset, meaning we are separate from the business, and moving into an and mindset, which is we are the business. The second distinction, and this also has to do with leadership, and as we're thinking about HR, it's the distinction between the cavalry and us. So what do I mean by that? Well, often in moments of despair, in wars of old and things, we would say, send in the cavalry. The cavalry's coming to rescue us. But guys, in this future of work, which is now, it's this moment, we are the cavalry. There is no cavalry coming. So stepping into this leadership role, and again, particularly as HR executives, instead of waiting for what's going to happen for strategy to dictate, being one of the drivers together with the rest of your team of what the strategy is and it's going to look like. No one's coming. We are our own heroes in this case. And then finally here, so we look at this distinction between captive versus captain, the past of work and how we thought about our strategy and how we thought about careers and how we thought about what was possible for our organizations was a building block strategy. It was anchored in our assumptions and the constraints of the past. How would you think about this? So I teach a class on how to design the career of your dreams. I created this after I left the corporate world to design the career of my own dreams. And one of the reasons why decade after decade, year after year, most of the world still finds themselves disengaged or highly disengaged at work, everybody's familiar with those statistics, is because of this distinction here. We're taught to think about our careers from a point of view of a building block. And by the way, this is analogous for thinking about our strategy for our organizations, for our teams, for our companies as well. And what does this mean? You go to school, you study something, you're getting ready to graduate, and as you're getting ready to graduate, you scan the market for something that you can logically do with the things you know, and then you lock in and you get a job. And you start working and you amass a few years of experience and knowledge, and then you say, okay, I'm ready to grow again, and you scan the market, what can I do with what I have? And then you keep moving forward. The problem with this is that if you are like I was, and you made any decisions for yourself early in your career that are not particularly aligned with who you are today, the things that you value, and the kind of impact that you want to create, the more you move along this building block path, all you're doing is making bad decisions on top of bad decisions on top of bad decisions. Whereas if you shift into this thinking about planting your flag and you take a few steps back and you ask yourself, okay, I mean, this is a situation that we're in right now. Okay, since all bets are off and the things that we imagined that were going to be are no longer, what do we want to create? And then we align our skills, resources, and talents behind creating that. So that is the mindset applied. Moving away from being waiting for the cavalry and moving into being the cavalry, moving away from being separate from the business and being the business, and moving away from a constraint-based planning and into a space of freedom and opportunity and creativity. Education, where does education come into this? So as we think about what's going to help us thrive in the face of the future of work, and this means if you are running a learning and development organization, if you are thinking about how you are hiring people, the shift is moving away from being a subject matter expert, no matter how much you think you know about any given topic, and moving into a space of being a subject matter student. Now, with all of the years of my own career of recruiting, I thought that I knew a thing or two about it, and I was at an event, and somebody who didn't know that in a past life I had been a recruiter, and he was very young, just out of school, and he started explaining to me what recruiting is and how it works and why it works. Now, if I had had the position of subject matter expert, I would have said to him, no, I got this, thanks, but I have experience in this. Whereas from the position of a subject matter student, even though I have experience and knowledge, I listened. And there were a lot of what he said wasn't relevant or had been tried before or wasn't particularly on point, but there were enough nuggets of information there that if I had simply said, oh, no, I got this, I know it, I would have not learned and I wouldn't have had access to. So that's the first thing, this shift. What's going to help us thrive for ourselves and for our organizations is this shifting away from the expert who knows all the things into someone with experience who's curious about everything. And this goes for what we think we know about HR. Do we want to be right about the rules that we think we have, or do we want to be resilient and thrive? If you've seen the movie, this with the solo climb, Free Solo is the name of this movie. You see him, and he's already, the first time he's going to climb up El Capitan by himself. If he wanted to be right and stick to the date that he had originally set, something bad probably would have happened to him. But he was resilient. He put it off to a time when it was going to work better for him. So this notion of shifting away from being right and into being resilient. So how is this applied? It's shifting away from diploma and done, a world of diploma and done, and into a space of lifelong learning. So the people who graduate from school and are moving into your organizations, that's not the last time they're going to need to learn. And what's going to be demanded of us because of this great rate of disruption is that we're going to need to be constantly learning. So how you structure learning and development, how you offer classes and learning to your employees, and what that learning is meant to do. Is it on demand, or is it that once a year training? That's going to be a huge shift as you think about it. And then finally, here as we think about recruiting, moving away from recruiting from the right schools, whatever that means, the top schools or the top tier, and moving into recruiting the right people. And we were already making some shifts away from needing to have a college diploma or needing to have a certain background, really looking for competencies. So as we think about recruiting and as we think about where the best talent in the world is and is coming, this is a great way to help you think about that. And then finally, the importance of collaboration. So this future of work, understanding that the world that we are in now is we have moved away from a model of scarcity and we are moving into a model of abundance. There is no more fixed pie economics where I win, you lose, or vice versa. where there's compromise, which compromise is simply a translation for somebody isn't getting what they really want, and into a space of abundance where everybody wins, a bubbly economics where when I improve myself and I add that intellectual value, that ability to the whole, the value of the entire thing shifts and changes. And you can think about this in the difference in patent strategies from Coca-Cola, which hides that secret very well, versus Tesla, which opens up its patents for free use as long as it's in good faith, because the challenges that can be solved with that technology are much greater. The impact is much greater and more positive. Collaboration, when we think about who our competition is, this competition is very quickly going to become our colleagues. And we think about this, so underneath that scarcity to abundance competition, we're fighting over the same resources or the same clients or the same talent. Not so much anymore. In fact, for mutually assured thriving, we're going to need to partner with those who we thought our competition was. This goes for talent as well. And we're seeing examples of this with McDonald's and Aldi in Germany and in other places where people are sharing talent during this moment of crisis. And in a place where everybody wins, both companies because they get the employees that they need, the employees win because they don't lose their jobs or opportunities, or in the case of this picture here, this is from a meeting of the top deans and directors from over 25 of the world's best business schools who came together thanks to the former dean at the Yale School of Management to create solutions where they could together solve the challenges of management education. And I'm going to wind down here shortly so that we can get into a couple of Q&A before we close here. But as we're thinking about collaboration and how it's applied, we're moving away from this model, and this goes for recruitment, for rookie contract into a free agent model. Rookie contract meaning you have that on-campus recruiting program or the high potential recruiting program, and you do everything you can to get that person in the first year and have the contract be 10 years long or 15 years long or for the rest of their life. Well, after this moment of virus, it's going to be shifting to a free agent model. Some of the best talent in the world is going to start building up their careers around them through various experiences. So you're not going to be able to get them as full-time employees. So how do you work a free agent model where you're going to get the best talent, but only part of the time? So thinking about your organizational structures. And speaking of organizational structures, we are moving away from a pyramid model where we were a clear hierarchy and everybody had their box that they lived in or they went to. And we're moving over into an infinity model, which is much more flexible, both in terms of leadership. So today, because we're talking about the future of work, I'll be the leader because I happen to know more. But tomorrow, because we're talking about HR tech, let's say that one of the listeners on the call is going to be the leader because they happen to know more than I do around HR tech. But each of us is a leader. On the day that we're leading, we'll be in that leader role, but our leadership needs to be strong enough that we can step away from that leadership position. And then finally here, and then we'll open up for Q&A, we are moving away from a ladder model of career, which was already broken, by the way. The corporate ladder model was already broken over the last 2 decades, but ladder in terms of I get into marketing and I'm just going to keep doing marketing for the rest of forever, or I get into finance and I'm just going to keep doing that. That's already broken because, again, decade after decade, most of us find ourselves disengaged or highly disengaged at work, and we're moving over model, which is the opportunity for us to build a career in the things that we value, the kind of impact that we want to have, the way that we want to use our lives, and piece together a tapestry of our purpose. And organizations, as we think about what career pathing means, what we think about organizational design, what we think about when we think about what bonuses and benefits and other things need to shift in the face of this. All of that is invited to change, but what it really does is it opens up the opportunity for teams and companies that are much more engaged and really up to the business of creating value. So with that, I'll leave us with this quote, which is that we must be willing to give up the life that we have planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. The life that we have planned, ladies and gentlemen, went out the door when the virus hit, and that's just going to continue. So who are we going to choose to be? Are we willing to let go of that and step into the possibility of what's here for the future of work and the future of HR? So with that,